every Thursday. The same hotel. The same deceitful kiss.
The vanilla frosting on Hannah's 21st birthday cake looked innocent enough, but my wife Carol's words cut through the kitchen air like a rusty blade through flesh. "If your mother ever did that to me," I had just said, commenting on some celebrity divorce scandal Hannah was scrolling through on her phone, "I'd walk out the door and never look back." Carol paused mid-bite, that perfect suburban smile freezing on her lips. Then she laughed. Not the warm laugh I'd fallen in love with 27 years ago, but something cold and sharp. "Then you should have left me after the first convention, Alan. 27 years ago." The silence that followed could have choked a horse. Hannah's fork clattered against her plate, and I watched my daughter's face drain of color. But it wasn't shock I saw there. It was recognition. The kind of look you get when someone finally says out loud what everyone already knows. My stomach dropped into my work boots. "Mom," Hannah whispered. But Carol just shrugged, taking another bite of cake like she'd commented on the weather. "What?" Carol's voice carried that fake innocence she'd perfected over the years. "It's not like it's news to anyone in this room." I stared at my wife, really looked at her for the first time in years. The perfectly styled blonde hair that cost more than my monthly truck payment. The manicured nails that never touched a dish or a tool. The designer clothes that somehow made her look like she was attending a board meeting even at our kitchen table. "Carol." My voice came out steady, which surprised me. "What exactly are you saying?" She met my eyes then, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Not guilt, not shame. Relief. "I'm saying that Brett Landis and I have been seeing each other for over 2 decades, Alan. And before you get all dramatic about it, Hannah's known since she was 16. Haven't you, sweetheart?" My daughter, my little girl who used to build blanket forts with me and fix broken radios in my workshop, nodded slowly. Tears were streaming down her face, but she nodded. "I'm sorry, Dad. I tried to tell you once, but you said I was being silly. You said Mom would never—" The memory hit me like a sledgehammer. 3 years ago, Hannah had come to me with some story about seeing Mom with a man at the mall. I'd brushed it off, told her she was mistaken, told her to focus on her studies instead of inventing drama. "How long have you known?" I asked Carol, my voice barely above a whisper. "Known what?" "That I didn't know." Carol's laugh was like breaking glass. "Oh, Alan, sweet, oblivious Alan. I've been waiting for you to figure it out for years. I thought you were just too proud to say anything, but you really had no idea, did you?" I stood up from the table, my chair scraping against the linoleum floor. The sound seemed to echo in the sudden quiet of our kitchen. A kitchen where I'd made thousands of breakfasts, packed countless lunches, celebrated every birthday and holiday for over 2 decades. "Where are you going?" Carol asked, but there was no concern in her voice. Just mild curiosity, like she was asking about my weekend plans. "Out!" "Alan, don't be dramatic. Sit down. Let's talk about this like adults." I stopped at the kitchen doorway and turned back. Carol was already cutting herself another piece of cake. Hannah was staring at her hands, tears still falling. 27 years, I said. 26 years and 8 months, if you want to be precise, Carol replied. The Portland Convention Center, September 1997. You remember? You stayed home with baby Hannah while I went to that marketing conference. I remembered. I'd been proud of her for going, for building her career. I'd spent the weekend teaching 18-month-old Hannah how to say dada and feeling like the luckiest man alive. "I'll be in the workshop," I said. "Don't sulk too long, Alan. We need to discuss how we're going to handle this." Handle this. Like it was a plumbing problem or a broken appliance. I walked out of my house, our house, and headed for the detached garage where I'd built my workshop. The October rain was starting to fall, turning the leaves on our maple tree into a slick carpet of gold and red. Beautiful and treacherous at the same time. Just like my marriage, apparently. My workshop had always been my sanctuary. 30 years in the Navy had taught me the value of order, and every tool had its place on the pegboard walls. Security system components lined the metal shelving I'd installed myself. Cameras, motion sensors, control panels, the tools of my post-military trade. I sat in my old leather chair and stared at the workbench where I'd spent countless hours building alarm systems for half the businesses in town. Alan Ryder, reliable security expert, the guy everyone trusted to keep their valuables safe. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone started buzzing around midnight. Carol. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again 20 minutes later. Then again. By morning, I had 17 missed calls and 11 text messages. Alan, come inside. We need to talk. Don't be childish about this. Hannah's worried about you. Brett wants to meet. He thinks we should all sit down together. Brett wants to meet. The man who'd been screwing my wife since before Hannah could walk wanted to have a chat. The man whose name I'd heard Carol mention casually over the years. Her colleague, her friend from work. The guy who sometimes called during dinner. I'd never suspected. Not once. The rain kept falling, drumming against the workshop roof like tiny fists. I made coffee on the hot plate I kept for long nights working on installations. The bitter taste matched my mood perfectly. Around noon, I heard footsteps on the gravel outside. Not Carol's heels. She never came to the workshop. Heavy boots, a man's walk. The door opened without a knock, and Brett Landis stepped into my sanctuary. I'd met him exactly 3 times in 27 years of marriage. Company Christmas parties where he'd shaken my hand and complimented my tie. He was shorter than I'd remembered, maybe 5'8" to my 6'2", gym muscles straining against an expensive polo shirt, the kind of tan you get from golf courses, not construction sites. Alan. He nodded like we were old friends. We need to talk. Do we? He closed the door behind him and looked around the workshop. His eyes lingered on the security equipment, the cameras, the monitors. Nice setup you've got here. It pays the bills. Look, I know this is awkward. Awkward? I stood up, and Brett took a step back. Good. My wife tells me she's been cheating on me for 26 years and 8 months. My daughter's known about it since she was 16. And you think it's awkward? Carol said you took it pretty well. Carol said that? Brett's confidence wavered slightly. She said you just walked out. No yelling? No drama? She figured you'd known all along and were just relieved to have it out in the open. I studied his face. Weak chin, expensive dental work, eyes that couldn't quite meet mine. This was the man my wife had chosen over me. This was what 26 years and 8 months of marriage was worth. How long have you been married, Brett? 15 years. Look, Alan. Kids? 2, but that's not... Does your wife know? The question hung in the air between us. Brett's face went pale under his artificial tan. That's different, he said finally. Is it? Melissa doesn't need to know. It would just hurt her. But I needed to know. You're a man. You can handle it. I laughed. Actually laughed. The sound seemed to surprise both of us. I can handle it, I repeated. That's your justification? That I can handle being lied to and betrayed for over 2 decades because I'm a man? Carol loves you, Alan. She's always loved you. This thing with me, it's just physical. Just physical for 26 years. She never wanted to hurt you. Then why tell me now? Brett shifted uncomfortably. She's tired of sneaking around. She wants to be honest about our relationship. Your relationship. We're in love, Alan. We have been for years. Carol wants to stop pretending. I walked over to my workbench and picked up a screwdriver, not as a tool, just something to keep my hands busy. Brett flinched anyway. So what exactly are you proposing, Brett? A civilized arrangement. Carol stays married to you for appearances, but she and I can be open about being together. No more hotels, no more lying about weekend trips, just honesty. Honesty. You keep the house, the respectability, the social status. Carol gets to be happy. I get to be with the woman I love. Everyone wins. I set the screwdriver down carefully. And what do I get out of this arrangement? You get to keep your dignity. No messy divorce, no public humiliation. Your friends and neighbors never have to know what really happened. My friends and neighbors? Think about it, Alan. You're 45 years old. You think you're going to find someone else? Start over? Carol's offering you a way to save face. The rain had stopped while we were talking. Weak autumn sunlight was filtering through the workshop windows, highlighting the dust motes floating in the air. Everything looked the same as it had an hour ago, but something fundamental had shifted. Get out, I said quietly. Alan, be reasonable. Get out of my workshop. Think about what I'm offering. I picked up the screwdriver again. This time, Brett got the message. Carol's right about you, he said from the doorway. You're not as smart as you think you are. After he left, I sat back down in my leather chair and looked around my workshop. My sanctuary, my safe space, the only place in the world that had ever been completely mine. Not anymore. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. The first call went to Gina Marchetti, who owned Murphy's Pub downtown. Gina had been feeding me information about my customers' security needs for years. who was getting divorced, who was worried about employee theft, who needed cameras installed after a break-in. In a town of 12,000 people, bartenders knew everything. Alan, it's 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. Please tell me you're not drinking already. I need to ask you something, Gina. About Carol. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I knew she knew. Crap, she said finally. She told you? You knew. Honey, everyone knew. I mean, not everyone, but anyone who pays attention. She's been coming in here with that Brett character for years, always on Thursday nights, always sitting in the back booth, always acting like they were discussing business. Thursday nights. Carol told you she had book club on Thursdays, right? Book club. For 15 years, Carol had left the house every Thursday at 7 p.m. for book club. She'd come home around 11, sometimes smelling like wine, always with stories about the novels they'd discussed and the drama between the other members. How many people know, Gina? In town, maybe 20 or 30. But Alan, nobody talks about it because nobody wants to get involved. You know how it is? I knew how it was. Small town politics. Don't rock the boat. Mind your own business. Let sleeping dogs lie. What about Brett's wife? Melissa? I don't think so. She's not from here originally, keeps to herself mostly, focuses on the kids. Kids. Twin boys, 8 years old, I think. Look just like their daddy. After I hung up with Gina, I called my old Navy buddy, Tom Perry. Tom had retired from the service the same time I did, but he'd gone into private investigation instead of security systems. We'd kept in touch over the years, mostly Christmas cards and the occasional beer when he was passing through town. Alan Ryder, how the heck are you? I need a favor, Tom. Name it. Background check. Brett Landis works for Morrison Tech Solutions out of Portland. I need to know everything. Financials, employment history, personal life, parking tickets, everything. This about your wife? I shouldn't have been surprised that Tom knew. He made his living finding out things people wanted to keep hidden. Yeah. How deep do you want me to dig? Deep as you can go without breaking any laws. Give me 48 hours. The next call was harder. Hannah answered on the second ring. Dad, are you okay? Mom's been calling everyone looking for you. I'm fine, sweetheart. I'm in the workshop. Are you coming home tonight? Home. The word felt strange in my mouth. I don't know yet. Hannah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. When you tried to tell me about your mother 3 years ago, what exactly did you see? Hannah was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was small and sad. I saw her kissing him in the parking lot at the mall. They were by his car, and she had her hands in his hair, and they were kissing like people do in movies. Like they were really in love. Why didn't you push harder when I didn't believe you? Because I was 16 and scared, and I didn't want our family to fall apart. I thought maybe if I just pretended I hadn't seen it, it would go away. I'm sorry I didn't listen. Dad, what are you going to do? Good question. What was I going to do? Roll over and accept Brett's civilized arrangement? File for divorce and split everything down the middle? Pretend the last 27 years hadn't been built on a lie? I don't know yet, Hannah, but I want you to know that none of this is your fault. You understand me? None of it. I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. After I hung up, I sat in my workshop and thought about Thursday nights. 15 years of Thursday nights. Carol getting dressed up for book club, coming home with wine on her breath and stories about novels I'd never heard of. I walked over to my computer and pulled up the security system I'd installed at Morrison Tech Solutions 2 years ago. Carol's company. The system I'd designed, installed, and maintained. The system that recorded everyone coming and going from the building. The system that had been faithfully recording Carol and Brett's Thursday night meetings for over 2 years. I'd never looked at the footage before. Why would I? It was just Carol working late, staying after hours to catch up on projects. At least that's what she'd told me. I pulled up the files from the past 6 months and started watching. Thursday, October 3rd, 7:47 p.m. Carol's Honda Civic pulls into the parking lot. She sits in the car for 3 minutes, checking her makeup in the rearview mirror. 7:51 p.m., Brett's BMW arrives. He parks next to Carol's car. 7:52 p.m. They walk into the building together. Brett's hand is on the small of Carol's back. 11:23 p.m. They exit the building. Brett is carrying Carol's jacket. They stand by her car, talking for several minutes. 11:31 p.m. Brett kisses Carol goodnight, not a peck on the cheek, A real kiss, the kind married people give each other. 11:33 p.m. Carol drives away. Brett follows 30 seconds later. I fast-forwarded through the footage from every Thursday for the past 6 months. Same routine, same timing, same goodbye kiss. Sometimes they stayed later, sometimes they left earlier, but they always left together, and Brett always kissed my wife goodnight. My phone buzzed with a text message from Carol. "Alan, this is ridiculous. Come home. We're adults. We can work this out." I typed back, "Working late tonight, don't wait up." Then I settled in to watch more footage. I had 24 months of Thursday nights to review, and suddenly I had all the time in the world. Tom Perry called back Wednesday morning with Brett's background check. "Your boy's got some interesting financial habits," Tom said without preamble. "Makes good money, $95,000 a year base salary plus commissions, but he's leveraged to the eyeballs. 2 mortgages, 3 car payments, credit cards maxed out. He's living way beyond his means." Gambling problem? Worse. Keeping up with the Joneses problem. Country club membership, private school for the twins, wife drives a brand new Escalade, classic case of champagne taste on a beer budget. What about his employment record? Clean mostly, but here's the interesting part. He's been at Morrison Tech for 8 years, and his territory includes all of Central Maine. Guess who approves his expense reports for client entertainment and overnight travel? I already knew the answer. Carol. Your wife's been signing off on Brett's expense account for 8 years, Alan. Hotels, restaurants, weekend conferences that may or may not have actually happened. If anyone at Morrison Tech wanted to dig into it, they'd find some very creative bookkeeping. After Tom hung up, I sat in my workshop thinking about expense reports and overnight travel, about Thursday night book clubs and weekend marketing conferences, about 26 years and 8 months of lies, all hiding in plain sight. My phone rang. Hannah. "Dad, you need to know something. Mom's friend Shannon called me this morning." Shannon Reeves, Carol's best friend since college, her partner in crime for every girls' night out and weekend shopping trip. If anyone knew the full extent of Carol's deception, it would be Shannon. What did she want? She wanted to know if you'd said anything to me about hiring a lawyer. She seemed really nervous, Dad. Like scared nervous. What did you tell her? I told her I hadn't talked to you about any lawyers, but Dad, why would she be scared? It's not like she's the one who's been cheating. Unless she was. Unless Shannon had her own secrets to protect. Unless Carol's affair had been enabled by a whole network of lies and cover stories and mutual protection. Hannah, I need you to think back over the years. When your mom went out with Shannon, where did they say they were going? Shopping mostly. Sometimes dinner and a movie. Girls' nights out, you know? Did Shannon ever call the house looking for your mom on those nights? No, never. They always made their plans in advance. What about when your mom was supposedly at book club on Thursday nights? Did Shannon ever mention the book club? Hannah was quiet for a moment. Actually, that's weird. Shannon's always talking about books she's reading, but she never mentioned being in Mom's book club. I just assumed they were in different groups. Did your mom ever bring home books from book club? No. She said they read everything online now, e-books and discussion forums and stuff. Another lie. Another small deception that had seemed perfectly reasonable at the time. I spent the rest of Wednesday reviewing security footage and making phone calls. The picture that emerged wasn't pretty. Carol and Brett had been using company resources to fund their affair for years. Fake client meetings, inflated travel expenses, hotel rooms charged to Morrison Tech's corporate account. But more than that, they'd built an entire support network of enablers and accomplices. Shannon had been providing alibis for Carol's Thursday nights. Marcus Webb from Carol's office had been covering for her during weekend trips. Even Carol's sister in Boston had been part of the conspiracy, providing fake invitations to family events that never happened. 26 years of systematic deception, and I'd never suspected a thing. Thursday evening, I decided to conduct a little field research. Instead of staying in my workshop, I drove to Morrison Tech and parked across the street with a clear view of the employee parking lot. 7:43 p.m., Carol's Honda arrived right on schedule. 7:48 p.m., Brett's BMW pulled up next to her car. But this time, instead of going into the building, they sat in Brett's car talking for nearly 20 minutes. I could see Carol gesturing emphatically, and even from a distance, it was clear they were arguing. 8:07 p.m., Carol got out of Brett's car and walked quickly to her own vehicle. 8:08 p.m., Carol drove away. Brett sat in his car for another 10 minutes before following. I waited until both cars were gone, then drove home. Carol's Honda was already in the driveway when I arrived. She was waiting for me in the kitchen, still dressed in her work clothes. Her face was flushed, and her carefully styled hair looked windblown. "We need to talk," she said. "Do we?" "Alan, I know you're hurt. I know this is difficult, but we're going to have to find a way to move forward." "Are we?" "Brett told me about your conversation in the workshop. His proposal might not have been perfectly articulated, but the basic idea makes sense. We're both adults. We can handle this maturely." I sat down at the kitchen table where, just 3 days ago, I'd been a happily married man celebrating his daughter's birthday. "Tell me about the expense reports, Carol." Her face went white. "What?" "Morrison Tech's corporate account, the hotel rooms, the fake client meetings, the weekend conferences that never happened. Tell me about those." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Brett's been charging his affair with you to the company for 8 years, and you've been approving the expenses. That's embezzlement, Carol. That's fraud. You're being paranoid." "Am I? Should we call Morrison Tech's CFO and ask him to review Brett's expense reports? I bet that would make for an interesting conversation." Carol sat down across from me, her hands shaking slightly. For the first time since this whole mess started, she looked genuinely afraid. "What do you want, Alan?" "I want the truth. All of it. 26 years worth." "And then what? You'll forgive me? We'll go to marriage counseling and work it out?" I looked at my wife, really looked at her. The woman I'd married, the mother of my child, the person I'd trusted more than anyone else in the world. "No," I said. "I don't think we will." Friday afternoon, Tom Perry called with more information. "I did some digging into your wife's social circle," he said. "That Shannon Reeves character, she's got her own secrets. Been having an affair with Marcus Webb from Morrison Tech for about 3 years. His wife doesn't know either." Jesus. "Gets better. I talked to a bartender at the Riverside Inn. That's where your wife and Brett have been meeting for their Thursday night rendezvous. Turns out Shannon and Marcus use the same place on Tuesday nights. It's like a whole cheating network. What about Brett's wife? Still in the dark as far as I can tell. But Alan, there's something else. Brett's been talking to people about you, spreading stories." "What kind of stories?" "That you're unstable, that you've been violent with Carol in the past, that she's afraid of you." My hands tightened on the phone. "That's BS. I know it's BS. You know it's BS. But Brett's trying to get ahead of the story. If this all comes out publicly, he wants people to think Carol was the victim of a toxic marriage who found comfort with a caring friend. Son of a witch. There's more. He's been telling people that you've been following him, threatening him, building a case that you're some kind of dangerous stalker." I thought about my conversation with Brett in the workshop. Had I threatened him, I'd picked up a screwdriver, but only to keep my hands busy. I told him to get out, but I hadn't raised my voice or made any threatening gestures. Except now Brett was telling people I had. "What do you recommend, Tom?" "Document everything, every conversation, every interaction, every phone call. If Brett's trying to paint you as the bad guy, you need evidence that shows otherwise." After Tom hung up, I sat in my workshop and thought about reputation. In a small town, reputation was everything. If Brett succeeded in painting me as an unstable, controlling husband, it wouldn't matter what Carol had done. I'd be the villain in this story. Unless I took control of the narrative first. I started with Gina at Murphy's Pub. Friday night was always busy, and I knew the regulars would be there, the people who formed the backbone of the town's gossip network. "Alan!" Gina called out when I walked in. "Haven't seen you in here on a Friday night in years. Carol finally giving you a night off? Perfect opening." "Carol's busy tonight. Thursday book club ran long, so they moved it to Friday this week." I said it loud enough for the people at nearby tables to hear. Gina's eyebrows went up slightly, but she played along. "Book club, huh? What are they reading these days?" "Oh, you know Carol. She never tells me much about it, just that she and her friend Shannon meet up with some guy from work to discuss literature." The conversations at the nearby tables got quieter. People were listening now. "Guy from work?" Gina asked. "Brett something. Landis, I think. Nice enough fellow. Married, couple of kids. He and Carol have been meeting for years to discuss books." I ordered a beer and sat at the bar, making casual conversation with the other patrons. By the time I left an hour later, half the town knew that Carol was meeting regularly with a married man from her office, and that her supposedly clueless husband was starting to ask questions. Saturday morning, I got a furious phone call from Shannon. "What the heck do you think you're doing?" she demanded. "I'm sorry, who is this?" "Don't play dumb with me, Alan. People are calling me asking about Carol's book club." They want to know why I'm not in it if Carol and I are such good friends. Well, are you in it? You know full well there is no book club. Do I? Because Carol's been telling me about book club for 15 years. If there's no book club, where has she been going every Thursday night? Shannon was quiet for a moment. Alan, you're playing with fire here. Am I? Carol's not the only one with secrets. You start digging into people's private lives, you might not like what you find. Is that a threat, Shannon? It's friendly advice. Some stones are better left unturned. Like the stone that covers your Tuesday night meetings with Marcus Webb at the Riverside Inn? The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. How did you... I'm in the security business, Shannon. I know how to find things out. You bastard. Here's how this is going to work, I said, my voice calm and steady. You're going to stop providing alibis for Carol. You're going to stop covering for her lies. And you're going to stop helping her make a fool out of me. And if I don't, then Marcus's wife gets an anonymous tip about your Tuesday night book club. Shannon hung up without another word. Sunday afternoon, Marcus Webb showed up at my workshop. He was a thin, nervous man in his early 40s, the kind of guy who probably got picked on in high school and never quite got over it. We need to talk, he said, trying to sound tough, but mostly succeeding in sounding scared. About what? About your wife and Brett. About what you think you know. What I think I know? Carol's a good woman, Alan. She doesn't deserve to have her reputation destroyed because you can't handle the truth about your marriage. I set down the camera I'd been installing and gave Marcus my full attention. What truth is that? That she's been unhappy for years. That she stayed with you out of loyalty, out of duty, but that she deserves to be with someone who appreciates her. Someone like Brett. Brett loves her. He's always loved her. And what about you, Marcus? Do you love Shannon? Marcus's face went red. That's different. How? Shannon and I, we're just friends. We talk. Sometimes we have dinner. It's not the same thing. You have dinner at the Riverside Inn every Tuesday night. In the same hotel where Carol and Brett have been meeting for years. That's an interesting coincidence. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Should we call your wife and ask her what she thinks about your friendship with Shannon? Marcus took a step forward, his hands clenched into fists. Stay away from my family. Then stay away from mine. We stared at each other for a long moment. Marcus was probably 20 pounds lighter than me and looked like he'd never been in a real fight in his life, but he was desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. You're making a mistake, Alan, he said finally. You think you're the victim here, but you're not. Carol's the victim. Brett's the victim. You're just a bitter old man who can't accept that his wife found someone better. Get out of my workshop. This isn't over. Yes, I said quietly. It is. After Marcus left, I sat in my leather chair and thought about victims and villains, about truth and lies and the stories people tell themselves to justify their actions. Carol thought she was the victim of a loveless marriage. Brett thought he was the victim of an impossible situation. Shannon and Marcus thought they were victims of their own loneliness. But I was the one who'd been lied to for 26 years. I was the one who'd been made a fool of in front of the entire town. I was the one whose family had been destroyed by other people's selfishness. If anyone was the victim here, it was me. But I was done being a victim. It was time to be something else. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Portland. Morrison Tech Solutions occupied the top 3 floors of a converted mill building overlooking the Fore River. I'd installed their security system 2 years ago, which meant I had legitimate access to the building and a working relationship with their IT department. I told the receptionist I was there for routine maintenance on the camera system. She waved me through without a second glance. The IT manager, a kid named Dave, who couldn't have been more than 25, was happy to see me. Alan, good timing. We've been having some issues with the parking lot cameras. They keep going offline. I'll take a look, I said. But first, I need to check the server room. Make sure the main system is running properly. Dave led me to the server room and left me alone with the computers that controlled Morrison Tech's entire digital infrastructure, including their financial systems. I wasn't there to steal anything or destroy any data. I was just there to copy some files. Specifically, Brett Landis's expense reports for the past 8 years. It took me less than 20 minutes to download everything I needed onto a flash drive. Receipts, hotel bills, restaurant charges, travel expenses, all approved by Carol, all paid for by Morrison Tech, all documenting an affair that had been funded by corporate money. While I was at it, I also copied the building's security footage from the past 2 years. Every Thursday night meeting between Carol and Brett, every lingering goodbye kiss, every time they'd used company property for their personal relationship. By the time I finished in the server room and actually fixed the parking lot cameras, I had enough evidence to destroy both Carol and Brett's careers and possibly land them in jail for embezzlement. But I wasn't interested in sending anyone to jail. I had something else in mind. Tuesday evening, I called Carol and asked her to meet me at Murphy's pub. Why? She asked suspiciously. Because we need to talk, and I'd rather do it in public. Neutral ground. Fine. 8 o'clock. Murphy's was crowded for a Tuesday night, which was exactly what I wanted. I arrived early and chose a table in the center of the room where everyone could see and hear our conversation. Carol showed up 10 minutes late, looking nervous. She'd dressed carefully. Conservative business suit, minimal makeup, wedding ring prominently displayed. She was playing the role of the dutiful wife trying to save her marriage. "You look nice," I said as she sat down. "Thank you." She glanced around the crowded pub. "Why here, Alan? Why not at home?" "Because home doesn't feel like home anymore." Gina came over to take our drink order. Carol asked for white wine. I ordered another beer. "So," Carol said after Gina left, "what did you want to talk about?" I pulled out my phone and set it on the table between us. "I wanted to show you something." I'd spent Monday evening editing together a highlight reel from Morrison Tech's security footage. Carol and Brett arriving together, leaving together, kissing goodbye in the parking lot. 2 years' worth of Thursday night meetings compressed into a 5-minute video. Carol's face went pale as she watched herself on the small screen. "Where did you get this?" "I installed that security system, remember? I have maintenance access." "You can't use this. It's private property. It's probably illegal." "Is it illegal or is it just embarrassing?" Carol grabbed for the phone, but I pulled it back. "Careful," I said. Wouldn't want to cause a scene. The conversations at nearby tables had gotten quieter. People were starting to pay attention to us. "What do you want, Alan?" "I want you to tell me the truth. Right here, right now, in front of all these people. I want you to admit what you've done. I'm not going to humiliate myself for your entertainment. You've been humiliating me for 26 years. I think it's your turn." Gina brought our drinks. Her eyes flicked between Carol and me, and I could see her trying to figure out what was happening. "Everything okay here?" Gina asked. "Fine," Carol said quickly. "We're fine." "Actually," I said, "we're not fine. My wife has something she'd like to share with everyone." "Alan, don't do this." "Do what? Tell the truth?" "I thought you wanted honesty in our relationship." I stood up and raised my voice slightly. Not shouting, just speaking loud enough for the whole pub to hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet my wife, Carol. We've been married for 27 years, and she has an announcement to make." "Sit down!" Carol hissed. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No, Carol, I'm embarrassing you. There's a difference." The entire pub was watching us now. 40 or 50 people, all waiting to see what would happen next. "Carol's been having an affair," I announced, "for 26 years and 8 months, to be precise, with a married man named Brett Landis. They meet every Thursday night at the Riverside Inn, and they charge the hotel rooms to their company's expense account." The silence in Murphy's pub was absolute. Carol looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "She told me about it last Sunday," I continued. "At our daughter's birthday party. Just announced it over cake, like it was no big deal. Said everyone already knew anyway." I looked around the room at all the familiar faces, people I'd known for years, customers whose businesses I'd protected, neighbors I'd helped with home repairs. "Did you all know?" I asked. "Did everyone in town know my wife was cheating on me except me?" A few people nodded reluctantly. Others looked away, embarrassed. "Well," I said, sitting back down, "now it's official. No more secrets, no more lies, no more pretending. Carol Ryder has been sleeping with Brett Landis for over 2 decades, and she wants everyone to know about it." Carol stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I'm leaving." "Good idea. Brett's probably waiting for you at the Riverside Inn. Wouldn't want to be late for book club." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. As she passed the bar, I heard someone whisper, 26 years? Jesus Christ. After Carol left, I finished my beer in relative silence. A few people came over to offer awkward condolences or ask if I was okay. Most just stared. When I finally got up to leave, Gina caught my arm. "You okay, honey?" "I'm fine, Gina. Better than fine, actually." "What are you going to do now?" I smiled. Now I'm going to go home and get a good night's sleep. For the first time in 26 years, I don't have to wonder where my wife is or who she's with. It's liberating. I left Murphy's pub and drove home through the quiet streets of my small town. Word of Carol's public humiliation would spread quickly. By morning, everyone would know the truth about my marriage. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The real reckoning was just beginning. Wednesday morning, I woke up alone in my house for the first time in 27 years. Carol hadn't come home the night before, which wasn't surprising. She was probably holed up at Shannon's house, planning her next move. My phone had 17 missed calls and 23 text messages. Most were from Carol, begging me to call her back. A few were from Hannah, worried about both her parents. One was from Brett. "We need to talk. This has gone far enough." I deleted all the messages without responding and drove to my workshop. I had work to do. Tom Perry had sent me detailed financial records for both Brett and Marcus. Brett's debts were even worse than Tom had initially reported. He was 3 months behind on his mortgage and facing foreclosure. Marcus wasn't much better off, having taken out a second mortgage to pay for his affair with Shannon. Both men were desperate, which made them dangerous but also predictable. Around noon, Brett showed up at my workshop. This time he wasn't alone. Marcus was with him, looking scared but trying to appear tough. "Alan," Brett said, "we need to end this." "Do we?" "What you did last night was cruel and unnecessary. Carol doesn't deserve to be humiliated like that." "Doesn't she?" Marcus stepped forward. "You've made your point. Everyone knows now. Isn't that enough?" I looked at both men, my wife's lover and his accomplice, standing in my workshop like they had any right to be there. "No," I said. "It's not enough." "What do you want?" Brett asked. "Money? I can pay you." "With what? You're broke. 3 months behind on your mortgage, credit cards maxed out, facing foreclosure. What exactly are you going to pay me with?" Brett's face went red. "How do you know about my finances?" "I know lots of things, Brett. I know about the fake expense reports. I know about the company money you've been stealing to fund your affair with my wife. I know about the hotel rooms and the fake client meetings and the weekend conferences that never happened. That's not stealing. Those were legitimate business expenses. Were they? Should we ask Morrison Tech's CEO what he thinks about you using company funds to pay for hotel rooms where you slept with my wife?" Marcus grabbed Brett's arm. "We should go." "No," Brett said, shaking him off. "I'm tired of this. Alan, you want to play hardball?" "Fine, let's play hardball." He pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. It was a text message thread with Carol. "Your wife's been telling me about your violent temper," Brett said. "About how you've threatened her, how you've been following me, how you broke into Morrison Tech's computer system to steal private files. Is that what she told you?" "She's scared of you, Alan. We all are. You're unstable and you're dangerous." I laughed. "Dangerous? I'm a 45-year-old security technician who hasn't thrown a punch since high school. What exactly am I dangerous to? To our reputations, to our families, to our careers. Your careers." I walked over to my computer and pulled up the files I'd copied from Morrison Tech. "Let's talk about your careers." I showed them the expense reports, the hotel receipts, the documentation of 8 years of corporate theft. "This is enough evidence to have both of you fired and possibly prosecuted," I said. "Brett's been stealing company money, and Marcus has been helping him cover it up by providing false documentation." "You can't prove that," Marcus said weakly. "Can't I? Should we call Morrison Tech's CFO right now and ask him to review these files?" Both men went pale. "What do you want?" Brett asked again. "I want you to leave my wife alone." "Carol's a grown woman. She can make her own choices." "Can she?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like she's been manipulated by a con man who's been using her to steal money from her own company." "That's not true, isn't it? You've been charging your affair to Morrison Tech for 8 years. Carol's been approving the expenses because she's emotionally involved with you. You've been using her feelings to commit fraud." Brett's face was getting redder. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about, and so will the police when I turn this evidence over to them." "You wouldn't." "Wouldn't I?" I picked up my phone. "Should we find out?" "Wait," Marcus said desperately. What if Brett ended things with Carol? What if they stopped seeing each other?" "It's too late for that." "It's not too late," Brett said. "I can break it off with her. Clean break, no contact. We can all just move on." I looked at both men, seeing the fear in their eyes. They were finally beginning to understand that they weren't in control of this situation anymore. You think it's that simple? I asked. You think you can just walk away from 26 years of lies and betrayal and everything goes back to normal? What else do you want? Brett demanded. I want justice. What does that mean? It means you're going to pay for what you've done. Both of you. I walked over to my workbench and picked up a manila envelope. Inside were copies of all the evidence I'd gathered. The financial records, the security footage, the expense reports, everything. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm going to give you 24 hours to resign from Morrison Tech, both of you. Clean resignations, no severance, no references. You can't make us quit our jobs, Marcus protested. Can't I? I held up the envelope. Because if you don't resign, this evidence goes to Morrison Tech's board of directors, the police, and the IRS. You'll be fired anyway, but you'll also be facing criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. And if we resign? Brett asked. Then you disappear. You leave town, you leave the state, you never contact Carol again. You start over somewhere else and hope nobody ever finds out what you did here. That's insane. I have a family here. I can't just leave. You should have thought about that before you started stealing from your employer to pay for your affair with my wife. Brett and Marcus looked at each other, having some kind of silent conversation. We need time to think about this, Marcus said. You have until tomorrow at 5 p.m. After that, the evidence gets turned over to the authorities. And what about Carol? Brett asked. What happens to her? Carol is my problem, not yours. You don't get to worry about Carol anymore. After they left, I sat in my workshop and thought about justice. Real justice, not the sanitized version they showed in movies or talked about in courtrooms. The kind of justice that actually balanced the scales. Brett and Marcus would resign tomorrow. They'd leave town within a week. Their careers destroyed, their reputations ruined. They'd spend the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders, wondering if their past would catch up with them. Shannon would lose her best friend and her lover, left alone to explain to her husband why she'd been lying to him for years. And Carol would lose everything. Her lover, her enablers, her secrets, her carefully constructed double life. She'd be left with nothing but the truth, finally exposed for everyone to see. It wasn't enough to make up for 26 years of betrayal. Nothing could do that. But it was a start. # epilogue. The end of the lie. Thursday afternoon, Brett and Marcus submitted their resignations to Morrison Tech. No explanation given, effective immediately. By Friday, they were both gone, Brett to somewhere in Florida, Marcus to his brother's place in Ohio. They left behind ruined marriages, confused children, and a trail of debt and broken promises. Shannon lasted 3 days before her husband found out about her affair with Marcus. The divorce papers were filed the following week. Carol tried to come home Friday night, but I'd changed the locks. She stood on our front porch for 20 minutes, pounding on the door and demanding to be let in. The neighbors watched from their windows, but nobody came to help her. She's living in a studio apartment downtown now, working part-time at a temp agency. Morrison Tech fired her after an internal investigation revealed her role in approving Brett's fraudulent expense reports. She won't face criminal charges. The company decided it wasn't worth the bad publicity. But her career in event management is over. Hannah comes to visit me every weekend. She's handling the situation better than I expected, though she's stopped speaking to her mother entirely. I gave her chances to tell the truth, Hannah told me. She chose to keep lying instead. I've started dating Gina from Murphy's Pub. Nothing serious yet, just dinner and conversation, and the novel experience of being with someone who actually wants to spend time with me. She makes me laugh, which is something I'd forgotten how to do. The house feels different now. Smaller, somehow, but also more peaceful. I've turned Carol's home office into a reading room, filled it with books I've always wanted to read but never had time for. Real books, not the imaginary ones from Carol's fictional book club. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh, if I should have handled things differently, been more forgiving, tried to work things out. Then I remember 26 years and 8 months of lies. I remember the birthday cake confession, the network of enablers, the years of being made a fool of by people I trusted. I remember Brett's civilized arrangement proposal and Carol's relief at finally being caught. No, I wasn't too harsh. I was exactly harsh enough. The truth has a weight to it that lies can never match. It sits heavy and solid and real, impossible to ignore or explain away. Carol spent over 2 decades building an elaborate fiction around her affair, creating stories and alibis and cover-ups that required constant maintenance. But the truth? The truth just is, she cheated. They all lied. I found out, and now everyone knows. In a small town, reputation is everything. Carol will never get hers back. Neither will Brett or Marcus or Shannon. They'll be remembered as the cheaters, the liars, the people who broke their vows and betrayed their families. I'll be remembered as the man who found out and fought back. I can live with that.